Let's start in South Africa, with the National Union of Mine Workers said on Friday that one of its shaft chairpersons at Lonmin had been shot dead. NUN spokesperson Lesiba Sishoka told Reuters that the leader was killed on Thursday night in what they suspect to be a resurgence of violence in the area, pitting rival labour unions against each other. South African police confirmed that a man was gunned down, but they did not identify him by name. They also said the reason for the shooting was, at this point, unknown. Lonmin spokeswoman Suve said the victim was NUM chairperson at the Roland shaft at the company's Western Platinum mine. Lonmin's Marikana operations, of course, as we'll recall, were right at the epicenter of a fairly violent union conflict last year, where 34 miners were shot and killed by police. Also, piracy along Somalia's coastline has significantly reduced this year. That's according to the latest data from the International Maritime Bureau. Now, the world's maritime watchdog reports that 10 incidents so far this year have occurred, compared to 70 over the same period in 2012. It attributes the drop to increased military action on suspected pirate boats, land-based anti-piracy operations, and the presence of armed guards on ships as well. Now, the report indicates that overall piracy in the world seas is at its lowest third quarter level since 2006. There were 188 cases of piracy in the first 9 months of 2013. That's down from 233 over the same period last year. Hostage taking has also declined. 266 people were taken hostage this year, compared to 458 over the same period in 2012. Now, Zimbabwe's once lucrative car industry is struggling to survive following the importation of cheap second-hand cars from Japan. Zimbabwe is still struggling to rebuild its economy after a decade of recession marked by hyperinflation and chronic shortages of food and foreign currency.
Struggling to survive, Zimbabwe's once lucrative automotive industry is being strangled by the competition. The recent trend in importing cheap second-hand cars from Japan has local vehicle distributors panicked. Zimbabwe has been working hard to rebuild its economy since a unity government ended its decade-long recession in 2009. This economic progress was slowed by the then upcoming presidential elections. In July of this year, President Robert Mugabe was re-elected. The process, viewed as a success, had local automotive dealers prepared for the return of business. But this turned out not to be the case.
Business is not good at the moment, and things started being quite slow just before elections. And even now, after elections, we were expecting that things would be at least in a better position after elections, when at least people know what they want to do and they could plan. But now it's like things are getting worse and worse.
In the 1990s, Zimbabwe's auto industry employed an estimated 200,000 people. But now officials say the number is less than 2,000. With this decline in one of the country's major industries, Zimbabweans are calling on the government to intervene.
If you look at the current trends in the automobile industry, you realize that the Japanese market, the auto car industry of Japan, is slowly but surely getting to become an area where they are considering Zimbabwe as one of their dumping grounds. So their products, knowing quite very well that not less than 90% of cars which are bought or which are changing hands are generally second-hand vehicles in Zimbabwe.
Economic analyst Christopher Mugaga says the importation of Japanese vehicles is harming the local auto industry, saying the government needs to put measures in place to regulate the industry. Second-hand or not, more and more Zimbabweans are favoring imported vehicles over locally manufactured options. While industry officials report that more than $200 million worth of cars were imported in the first 5 months of 2012.
These are cars which are far better than cars from our local industry or from South Africa or from Europe. Cars from Japan are far better than all these other cars from other countries.
The influx of second-hand imported cars to the country has already forced Zimbabwe's Mazda plant to close. Despite this, high-end dealers say given the country's growing middle class, there will always be a market for new, locally sold high-end vehicles. G2 Abraham, CCTV.
That, of course, is a trend repeated across several African countries. Quick run through the markets now for you. Bit of a mixed bag depending on the market you're talking about, but the broad trend, however, is for gains by the close of trading today. The Nigerian All-Share Index, for example, higher by about half a percentage point. The All-Share Index in South Africa, also in the green, up about a tenth. The 20-share index in the Kenyan capital, Nairobi, however, in the red, but only marginally so, less than a tenth. And, of course, the Egyptian market closed this week. On to the sport now with Penina.